host for us here over time. And with that, I think I'm done with all of that, and I want to get into what for me is, do these things work? Are these guys, are we scaled up to use these? Can you guys hear me with this? Let's try it now. I hate talking into one of these things, right? You know, too many years of teaching, right? But this is different. Supply the embers enormously, and more houses catch on fire. We don't have to just sit back and say that's our fate. We can do something about it. So I'll leave you with this, and that is, I was just talking to a top firefighter this afternoon, and he said, you know, in this last 8-year period, we've lost 3 whole communities. Paradise, the whole community burned down. Palisades, the whole community burned down. Eaton Fire, the whole community of Eaton burned down. He said, that's not normal. We shouldn't lose whole communities, right? And so I hope this won't be just an informative meeting for you. I hope this will be a motivation for you to help us get the political energy we need to overcome the normal kind of resistance that'll be out there. And we'll talk about some of that normal resistance that'll be out there. But it's in all of our best interest to recognize that the greatest risk to her house burning down is if his house catches on fire. And that multiplies everywhere. We're all in it together. Let's try to move from here for the next 4 or 5 years and really change the paradigm in California. And so with that, thank you, Rob. And so with that, I want to talk specifically about some bills that I have, and then open it up to questions for a few minutes about that in this introductory part of the program. So at the state level, I'm able to pass, I've been able to introduce a bill that the Ventura County Board of Supervisors unanimously wrote in support. And when you think about it, what do we need to do to stop all these houses from burning down? We're going to get the wildfires. We're going to have the drought. We're going to have the ignitions, whether it's lightning, whether it's the electric lines, but we'll have the ignitions. But when they burn, they shouldn't burn the city down, right? And so one of the things that you have to have is you have to have enough water. And you will never have, we won't build, it's not practical to think we're going to have enough water to fight hundreds, if not thousands of houses on fire at the same time. But we should be able to maximize our current water systems, our current fire hydrant systems, so that we have water for longer than we have had in many of the fires in the past. The water supply should not run out unnecessarily early. And there are 3 things that we need to do to make sure that doesn't happen. One, when there's a red flag warning, we have to start making sure those water tanks are as full as best practices say they should be. The second thing is, we all know what's going to happen when there's a red flag warning, and that is the power is going to be shut off. When the power's shut off, we still need the water pump to be able to keep pumping water up to those tanks, right? If you don't keep pumping water up to the tanks, they will run out of water faster, 1. And 2, when they run out of water, they'll stay empty. But remember, I mentioned our fires, particularly in Ventura County and Southern California, are not a forest fire that comes ripping through with this wall of flame and enormous heat. Our fires are ember showers, and that's why you see this hopscotch around in Ondolando and other places of some houses catching on fire and other houses not catching on fire. It does not take a lot of water to control spot fires if you get on them quickly, but you have to have some water. And so we need the water hydrants to last hours, not minutes, when the fire hits. So this bill, there are 125 water districts in Ventura County. 125 water districts. Imagine being the fire department and trying to keep track of 125 water districts and how are they set up and what are they doing, et cetera. So this law says when there's a red flag warning and they get notified by the Office of Emergency Services here in Ventura County, they have to start topping their tanks off. And we'll come up with definitions of what topping tanks off mean and all of that stuff as the bill continues to move forward. The second thing is they have to, in advance, have backup generating power available to be able to kick on as soon as the power is shut off so they can keep filling those tanks. And the third thing that they have to do is they have to fire harden their water pumps. We had in a recent fire, we had a water pump, had a wooden roof, and the wooden roof caught on fire, the water pump burned up, and then you didn't have the water pump for a long time afterwards, right? So those are three really simple things, but if those three things happen, you could dramatically increase a community's ability to fight fire. And I'm going to hark back to the Ondolando blaze that we had. And in Ondolando, you had the whole community evacuate, come down. They're down there on Poli Street and Foothill, and they're watching the fire trucks go racing up into Ondolando. And then, while it's all ablaze, they watch the fire trucks come back down, and they say, "Why are you leaving?" And they said, "Because the hydrants are out of water." They were out of water, and they didn't have water again for hours, days, right? Because of these kinds of problems. We need to make sure we maximize that. That's the first bill, AB 367, right? I always get these too many numbers. There's 2,000 bills in the legislature. You have to keep all the numbers straight. But AB 367, and we want to work with the water districts, work with the fire districts to try to make sure that that happens. But that's just the beginning. There are the things that we need to do. That's specific for Ventura County, by the way, this bill. And then after that, we will take this bill a year from now and try to do it statewide. But we want to make sure we can understand all the processes of the bill here. Besides making sure we have the right water supply, we need a major effort when it comes to hardening our homes. I have a friend that lives down there in the Eaton Fire area, right? 31 homes in a row burnt down up to my friend's house. 31 homes. And it stopped at his house because it was hardened. And then the house beyond him did not burn, even though it wasn't hardened, right? Hardening homes works, pure and simple, but you have to harden the whole home. When you have thousands of embers hitting your home every minute, right, when these wind-driven, embers will find the weakest point. We know what the basic things are about hardening homes. We just have to make sure you completely harden your home. And then the second bill that I have right now is if you harden your home, you ought to get full credit for hardening your home. Because why do you want to spend that money, that time, that energy doing that? But how do you get credit? Well, the insurance companies have to know that her home is really hardened, right? I'm going to pick on you a lot. You're right in the right spot here, right? We have to make sure her home is truly hardened. We need a statewide certification process that says this home passes muster. This is a hardened home. If you just harden your roof and you don't harden the vents, why would the insurance company want to give you a significant discount in that situation? The insurance companies are on board for this, but we have to make sure that we have a good certification program. Nobody's done that yet in California. This is the beginning of that effort. So we have to harden homes. We have to certify the homes are hardened. We have to make sure people get substantial discounts for that. And imagine this, if you harden your home, you get lower insurance rates for the life of the home, right? You'll have to get it, by the way, renewed regularly to make sure you're not letting the brush grow up close to the house and all of those things. But you'll also have a home that's of higher value, particularly if you have a hardened home certificate there with your home. So we're going to do a number of steps and a number of bills about how to harden homes. And then we're going to say the next thing is recognize a whole community is in it together. It's a lot better if you harden your home. And then also if people clear out the dead trees, the stuff that's in the public right-of-way, all of those kind of things. And that's what creates fire-wise communities. And we're going to have legislation and a real push for fire-wise communities. That includes people in the community that are paying attention and trying to make sure everybody gets evacuated. They can go after spot fires. Those people need to be trained. We have things like citizens emergency response teams, those kinds of things. But we need communities to be better able to work together in advance to make sure that their community is a fire-wise community as we go forward. So this is going to be, I think, a perfect time for us to have this happen. We started on this last August before LA, and we were going, this is going to be a lift, It's less of a lift in the Assembly right now, but we have to strike while we have this moment. And so with that, let me just check and make sure I have not skipped anything else. There's a lot of state legislation that I wish I had time to talk to you about. I do want to say this about state legislation. We have increased the funding for CAL FIRE 47% since 2018. All right, that's a huge increase for CAL FIRE, and we have also increased the number of positions from 5,800 positions to 10,700 positions for CAL FIRE. We moved CAL FIRE's hours. Each firefighter works less per week. This is a major commitment. Last year, it was the only major area that got a funding increase in the state of California. We cut the budget on everything else last year except for fire, and we'll still see that commitment out there. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. And while you're thinking about your question, and Atticus, you're going to, for audience, we're just, that's what we're going to use these things for, right? Good. All right. So it's who from staff. Hold on a second. While you're getting ready to put, I'll tell you what, I've just did it. 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to try to do those 3 questions, right? So you're third, sir, right? 1, 2, and 3, but not yet. I've got, before you do that, all right, we had some people that pre-submitted questions. And so to honor those people that couldn't be here but pre-submitted their questions, I want to read you the question, all right? And this one is, we're going to turn this over to, first question, Joe, all right, who we will be introducing in just a moment here. Will each fire risk hazard, we have moderate, high, and very high fire risk zones, right? And by the way, the things I talked about in terms of water districts, water agencies, that applies to anybody serving water in a high or very high fire risk area. Not everywhere, just places that have high or very high fire risk areas. But will all those zones be treated the same, have their own rules and regulations, Joe? You're on.
So right now, in the very high fire hazard area, when you build a home, the requirements of the building code for home hardening apply. The requirements for defensible space apply. What's going to change is that the LRA local responsibility area now has mapped moderate and high fire hazard areas. So those home hardening requirements will also apply to the high zone in addition to the very high.
Great, thank you. And go ahead, sir. You got to go quick with your question, less than 30 seconds, or we're going to take the chain and pull you off.
Okay, sir.
All right?
This question is for both Matt and Steve. We had Proposition 19.
Talk into the end of it like that, yeah.
Okay. We had Proposition 19, which was voted on by all of California voters for increasing state fire funds. But we know, unfortunately, state property tax goes to the county. So my question is there an accountant from the state to see that that money goes to firefighting?
Thank you. I'm not aware of any funds that aren't going where they're supposed to legally be going, but we will check again, all right, just to make sure that based on that question. And please, if we'll try to make these questions, everybody in here has opinions about this stuff. We'll never get through everybody's opinions. But number 2, where are you? Sir? Oh, we need... Hey, my staff, somebody else come in and help
Excuse me, check.
Anna get these microphones around, right? Go ahead.
Thank you, Assemblymember Steve Bennett, and it was nice to meet you and Leslie. You mentioned about slow problems that take time to solve that we don't normally respond to. I'm professionally known as Dr. Slow. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Thank you. If there are any members of the community who were affected by the fires, whether it's in Thomas or Palisades or Eaton or anywhere else, who would like to build homes that can be self-insured so that they're sufficiently fire-safe proofed, I have at least one builder who's willing to pay the insurance for the life of the home. So that way, and if there are any builders who would like to participate in actually pulling together as a community, I would love that. If there's anybody, please meet me outside after the show. Thank you so much.
Mr. Bennett, thank you for organizing this. I guess my one question is, with regard to, you're covering a lot of things, and with one thing I'm wondering about is increasing the amount of control burns that we have to manage our fuels on our land. The county fire wants to do it, but the state permitting process and the air pollution control process is very arduous. And I think you're our hope with the state to take action to allow us to do more control burns.
Great.
Because I think that's part of it, is being able to manage our lands.
Good. Oh, good. This microphone on now? Can everybody hear me? Were you number 3, sir? Okay, great. Hey, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Let me get to this question here, and that is the whole issue of controlled burns is being revisited, but it's a complicated topic. It's actually because of climate change, we have fewer opportunities to do controlled burns. Controlled burns have to be done when you don't have too much of a drought, before you have too much rain, and we seem to either have too much of a drought or too much rain. So we have literally fewer calendar days when you can do it, and then you have to have the right wind, and so it's difficult. We are funding, I'm almost certain this will pass. We're funding some special, tribal communities used to do controlled burns a lot, and they have some knowledge there. We're doing some funding for them to do some more testing of their methods, but it is something that we're going to try to become more proactive about. But I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that it'll have the significant dent that people people associate it. You think about the Yosemite Valley, and everybody hears how the Indians used to clear the bottom of the Yosemite Valley. I mean, we're at a scale that controlled burns can have some impact. But I would offer you this as I talk to various people up in the state. If we're talking about reducing losses, we have to focus on the structure first, get that hard. And when you prioritize the spending of dollars, the prioritization should be related to how close you are to the structure. So to clear brush close to homes, to clear brush in the 1,000 feet around a community, absolute high priority. To thin the forest or do a controlled burn 10 miles from the city, valuable, not saying it's not valuable, but when you have to say you have a limited amount of money, how much goes where? But in terms of controlled burns, which we used to be able to do a lot more often here in Ventura County, it's a combination of regulation and other things that are causing the problems, right? All right, I just want to make sure we're on track here schedule-wise, and we're still, we're still doing fine. And Atticus has got a question for us from online, and then I'm going to come back. I'll come back to the audience here in just a minute, right? What's that? All righty, great. Let me do this. If you guys, I'm going to read to you questions that are submitted, even though we're not going to answer them, so that you get an idea of the things that are out there, and so that these people get recognized for that. Number one, we have one question from somebody at United. It has a lot of very long technical questions, so I'll let Bert Handy know. We'll get back to you, Bert, with answers to your questions. Neighbors are concerned about the Arundel barranca. I think barrancas are going to be something there'll be lots of conversations about in terms of trying to make sure they're cleared and appropriate. That came from C.C. Johnson. John Edison, what to do when hydrants grow dry, how to access water from swimming pools. So we're going to try to keep the hydrants from going dry, but when they do go dry, yes, swimming pools and all of those things, and we don't have time to explain that all now, but we'll try to get information out about what to do in that situation. Rick White, hardening. Might you address fire-hardened new construction technology? Not in this meeting, we won't. There's lots of it out there. The insurance companies are spending a ton of money. They have a state-of-the-art in North Carolina facility. I've seen some videos of it. I mean, they have these structures, and they literally have these huge fans, and they blow thousands of embers right at these structures and test all kinds of materials. Between them and between what the CAL FIRE is doing, et cetera, there's lots of information out there. I'm the least concerned about how do we harden the homes. I'm much more concerned about how do we get everybody to harden the homes, right? But the technique and the technology is there. So Rick White will try to help you find those resources. Angela Reese, why are Santa Paula builders at the Harvest community being able to build on the hillside? We're going to get those kind of questions about grading and all of those kind of things all the time. New construction in California has to meet the strictest fire standards now. My concern is CAL FIRE estimates we have about 5 million existing homes in California in high, very high fire risk areas that have to be hardened. We got to get those homes hardened is what I'm most focused on. Will there be enough water in the tanks of the fire hydrants to help a fire if one should happen? There should be the maximum that the system is designed for, but there won't be enough if you let the fire get out of control. But in my mind, the fire, if we do this right, we shouldn't have these fires get out of control. We should be able to keep this from happening. We shouldn't lose a whole community. We should be able to limit it to a much smaller number of homes. I wish I could go on to these other questions, but I got my 1 minute notice to stay on schedule here. And so who are the other people that just quickly put their hands up? I saw this gentleman and right there, two. I'm going to take you two real quick, all right?
Testing.
All right, quick.
Considering that a lot of folks are
Into the end, please.
considering that a lot of folks are older and own their homes, perhaps don't have a bit of the extra money to accomplish the hardening, is there some consideration for adding some sort of funding options that they can take advantage of to move them forward?
I'm sure that in truly low-income areas, lots of low-income residents, there will be some kind of help. But just ask yourself the question, 5 million homes need to be hardened, right? The state of California is not going to be able to do that in most situations. Where I think the funding is going to come from is you're going to have a choice. You're going to pay X amount for your fire insurance, or you're going to pay Y amount, which is a lower amount. The delta between those two is what I'm going to spend to harden my home. And the difference is after hopefully 5 or 6 years, I get a payback, and now my home is hardened for the rest of my life, which may not be that much longer, right, for some of us here, but for other people, it might make sense, right? So I don't want to leave anybody with a false impression. There'll be significant funding for home hardening. I think some communities, I can think of some where the whole community is really, that there may be some effort to come in and do something. But it's going to be individual responsibilities, individual benefit, but the whole community benefits too. You're the last one, and we're going to go on.
I just wanted to ask what bill numbers so that we can all track and support your efforts on all your bullet points on your flyer that we've all been sent, and the reason why we're probably here this evening, so we can support that bill number.
You could tell this guy was a rock star. He knew how to hold that just like that and stuff. But it's AB 367 is the first one, right? And the certification one is 1143. That's the get a certification for your home being hardened. and there will be many more bills. They won't necessarily all be mine because I have colleagues that want to be, part of this effort as we go forward. So thank you for that question. Again, I wish we could answer, I wish we could take a lot more questions, but you guys, I'm sure, all understand in terms of where we are. I'm going to turn it over to Matt take us on to the next part of this presentation.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember. The next phase of tonight's program, we want to bring up the first panel. And I mentioned some of them briefly before, but I want to formally introduce them. These gentlemen are true experts in their respective fields. I want to start with Joe Morelli, who you heard from briefly before. Joe is the Ventura County Fire Department Fire Marshal, and he is going to talk about some efforts we're doing here locally surrounding vegetation management and other preparedness and response measures that we are taking. We have Steve Watson. Steve, want to raise your hand? Steve is the Executive Director of the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council, who's going to talk about the overview of that agency, or that amazing agency, and then also some of the wildfire resiliency programs they help operate. And then last but not least, we have Chris Danch, who is the Executive Director of the Ojai Fire Safe Council, who will give you an overview of his organization and some of the really innovative things they are doing in the Ojai Valley. So, gentlemen, are we going to start with you, Joe? We'll turn it over to you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Supervisor Levere. Thank you for having the Ventura County Fire Department here tonight. I'm going to make this quick. I'll keep it to the 10 minutes and available afterwards for questions. So I'm going to talk about our fire risk and our hazard reduction. So I almost don't need to talk about this because of the fire we just had, what we've all seen. You've all seen the news coverage. Assemblymember Bennett touched on this, that Thomas Fire 2017 was the largest fire in state history. It's now number 9. There's a whole slew of other stats to go with that. We all know our fire risk. It's probably our number 1 risk here in Ventura County. Part of that fire risk, it comes with, as you heard, it's the ember production. You can get a fire spotting 4 miles ahead of a fire front in 80 to 100 mile an hour winds, which is what we've seen recently. So I'm going to bring up this slide again later, and we'll talk a little bit more about what you're looking at in this slide immediately around the home, within the 5 feet around the home. Part of our goal is to reduce ignition potential with all of our wildfire mitigation programs, reduce ignition potential, limit fire behavior in the event of a fire, and to maintain our access, which gets us into communities and helps us to get people out. We do this through a few programs. We have our vegetation management program, which is looking at the first 100 feet around a home. And then we have, outside of the 100 feet, we have a wildland unit that does do some prescribed burns. That unit, in this last year, maintained 65 miles of fire roads, took on a number of fuel reduction projects over approximately 330 acres, and then we partner with the Fire Safe Council for chipping events. So those are a couple of the programs that we have, and we'll talk more about our partnerships in a bit. Just to touch briefly on local preparedness and response, the Ventura County Fire Department covers an area of 848 square miles, and we have 33 stations. Some of the changes over the last few years have included the addition of 2 Firehawk helicopters that have night flying and fire suppression capabilities at night, which you saw on the mountain fire here recently. And then we also have added 2 hand crews for a total of 4, which makes a significant difference with firefighting response. And part of what we do with those hand crews at the beginning of the year to bolster our efforts on prevention is we have them join us for our defensible space inspections. And we do thousands a year, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I mentioned that we have 2 additional hand crews, and they are all, in addition to firefighting, they're also doing these fuel reduction projects, they're busy throughout the year. So it's not just when we have the wildfires, it's the mitigation, it's the preparedness work that's being done throughout the year. So our defensible space program, I mentioned it's a 100-foot defensible space. So now I'm going to get into talking about our local ordinance. We've had our requirements in Ventura County going back 90 years. We've always been in this county at the forefront of wildfire preparedness. So these requirements go back almost 100 years. The standards have increased over time from 30 feet, 60 feet, and I think about 30 years ago, 100-foot defensible space. We inspect approximately 19,000 properties per year, which again, we use our Fire Prevention Bureau, our hand crews help with that. And then most of that program is successful because the community is responsive and over 99% voluntarily comply. For those that don't, we do the clearance and we charge the property owner, but it's such a small percentage. So it's a very successful program. Because of the efforts that the Ventura County Fire Department has been engaged in for decades, we are one of the 50 agencies in the state that have qualified for designation as a fire risk reduction community, or we have that recognition from the State Board of Forestry, and that's because we have more stringent standards for our defensible space, and we have a wildfire mitigation plan, and also we support the development of fire-wise communities. So there's other criterias, but I'm going to keep moving for the sake of time here. So our local ordinance, it has been effective with many of the fires in reducing the number of losses. As you've seen from the fires we've had in the last 7-8 years, we still have losses. There's still more that can be done. So our 3 zones for defensible space include the Zone 0, that's the zone 0 to 5 feet from the structure. Really the goal there is to remove anything that can burn away from the structure. The second zone is Zone 1, and that's between 5 and 30 feet from the structure. And that's where we look at thinning out the vegetation. You can read about all of this on our website, and you may have already heard this information. The Zone 2, 30 to 100 feet from the structure, that's where we want to reduce the flame front of an incoming fire, take the fire down up from the trees, which if you have a crowning fire, you want to get it down to the ground. You want to lessen the fuel load so you can lessen the radiant heat. So you can read all about this on our website. Glad to answer questions on it. It makes a difference. So one recent change for our local ordinance is for new construction. In the past, we've had a Zone 0 ember intrusion resistant. We've changed that to Zone 0 non-combustible for new construction or for additions of a certain size. I have this picture up there again. You see the firefighter putting out embers. There's a significant amount of work that goes into putting out embers around a structure. If that vegetation wasn't there, that firefighter's efforts could be spent elsewhere. So it really helps our firefighters to defend homes by not having anything that can burn within 5 feet of the structure. So that does apply to new construction. And then also we have restrictions on fencing. You can't just put a wood fence in, nor would I think anyone would want to right now, right next to their home. All of that is available on our website. We have strong partners in this county with our fire safe councils. We are involved in state advisory groups, task groups that can help influence and change things at the statewide level, because some of this we can't solve on our own here locally. So that's why we engage with these groups at the statewide level. We work with 2 resource conservation districts, park and open space agencies, our fire safe councils, and educating the community. This is a recent change. You'll see the maps out front if you want to take a look at those. They're also on our website. And to give you a brief overview of this, CAL FIRE 3 days ago issued these maps, and the maps for local responsibility areas, the mapped areas are increasing by 91%. So it's a significant increase. In the very high fire hazard area, we saw 30,000 acres added. It's even more than we would have anticipated in the fire department. We saw those maps on Monday. By law, we're required to make them available to the public within 30 days. So we're a few days in. Those are available on our website. And then we are required by law to adopt those maps within 120 days. And that will affect where these home hardening and defensible space requirements will apply for new construction. And then later in the year, by the governor's executive order, the State Board of Forestry is required to develop Zone 0 regulations that will apply to existing occupancies, all 90,000 or more than that now, throughout the county with the 3-year phase-in. So we'll see if that actually happens. The governor has issued an order on that. And I'll just note one more thing as I wrap up. We had in the county at the beginning of 2023, I think it was 4 Firewise communities. There are now 29. I think the Fire Safe Council is going to talk more about that. We do that in partnership with the Fire Safe Council and the communities. That is probably the single best way that you can get involved, in addition to hardening around your home, remove everything 5 feet away from your structure, but get involved in developing a Firewise community or get involved with the one that's already in your community, and that's how you can have a community-wide impact. Can go to our website for more information, but I'm going to wrap up to stay within the 10 minutes. Thanks.
I guess.
Oh, you got it.
So I think we're going right into me next. Can everyone hear me? All right, great. Let's see if I can get this to work. So I'm Stephen Watson, Executive Director of Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council. Assemblymember Supervisor, thanks for having us. So pop quiz. Everyone raise your hand if you've heard of a Fire Safe Council before tonight. Those of you online, you can raise your hand too. I just won't see it. So what is a Fire Safe Council? So there are 5 Fire Safe Councils throughout the county. They're listed on this slide here, and we work in collaboration with all of them as the Regional Fire Safe Council. Supervisor Levere said earlier that we all have a role to play, and essentially what I'm going to talk about today is the role that the community, you all have, and how we as the Fire Safe Council can support that. So Fire Safe Councils meet the needs of wildfire safety in their communities. And I'll talk a little bit about how we do that, because there are many factors that contribute to wildfire safety. So these are just some of our programs. I will focus and highlight on a couple because I have 5 minutes. Normally we have a 2-day training on home hardening, so I'll do it in a minute or so. So we'll start with home hardening. Many of you have probably seen, whenever there's a fire, they have these miracle home kind of images, you know, all over the media, right? And the secret to this is that it's not really a miracle. Many times these can be explained, and more often than not, it's because of home hardening. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, home hardening really makes a difference for wildfire safety. So I'm also going to do some homework for you all. So pop quizzes and homework, I guess you're back in school. But the homework is that there are 2 things I want you to think about when you're thinking about your home or when you go home tonight. And those 2 things are, 1, a pathway to fire to your structure. So we're looking at anything like a wooden fence that is, there's a bunch of vegetation, it'll catch fire on the fence, creep along right up to your home. And that's what we call a pathway to fire to your home. And so be thinking about that. Be thinking in your yard, what pathways are you creating? And defensible space is all about breaking up those pathways, right? And then the other thing I want you to think about are, Assemblymember mentioned the embers that can fly for miles. So we're talking about pathways first. It's kind of like a powder keg TNT, like the old cartoons, right? And then embers, we see the embers coming in for miles, and we talk about how you can stop the embers from getting into your home. Another pop quiz. How many of you know the size of the mesh screening on your vents? Okay. So 1/4 is often the size that people have, and that's not small enough. So we're recommending 1/8 or 1/16 so that the embers don't get into your home. So these are many different things that you can learn, and you can sign up for a home assessment, all free, no cost. All of our services are no cost. We're grant funded, and we'll send an assessor out to your home, walk around the structure, and give you more of these tips and things that you can do now. And some of them are low cost and easy to do. So where's this clicker? All right. So these are some examples of our resident grant program where we have some limited funding to actually help with some of these recommendations that we're talking about. We had a gentleman ask about what help there is for elderly people who don't have the means to be able to do this work. Reach out to us. Again, we are grant funded. Sometimes it's very limited. Sign up for our newsletter and you'll see when the cycles of applications are available for that. Here's another example of that zone 0 that the fire marshal spoke about. So on this one on the left, the winds are going to dry out this vegetation. The embers are going to come in. They're going to catch fire on that vegetation. It'll burn up right next to the vinyl window. The window will give out, and then fire will come right into the home. This one on the side doesn't have that vulnerability. And so this is an actual example of one that we funded and helped out. Last year, we directly helped with over $250,000 worth for residents in Ventura County. And that is not staff time. That is straight to the services, the contractors to do this type of work. The other thing I want to talk about is the Firewise USA program. And I think the Assembly member mentioned this, but just hardening one home is not enough. We have to harden a neighborhood. And this is what we're looking at with Firewise communities. We have the Ondolando Firewise community out there. If you have questions about what it's like, go reach out to them. We have monthly virtual workshops that we have 10s, 20s, 30 hours worth of recordings on our website about Firewise in particular. So you can learn all about the process there. On these slides, you'll see at the bottom, each one has kind of a link to our website and the program. If you go on our website, you can see all the programs as well. The other thing I'll mention is, this is kind of a busy slide, but it's workshops and education. That's a core component. People need to know what they can do and how they can prepare for wildfire. I'm also proud to say that it's not only the people with structures along the wildland-urban interface that get impacted, it's all of Ventura County. And we're partnering with MyCop to be able to provide workshops in Mixtec and Zapotec and other indigenous languages, which we're very excited about. Another thing that we worked on, and you can find online, are the community wildfire protection plans. There's over thousands of pages worth of information. Please visit our site. Chris Danch, my colleague here, will talk more about the Ojai CWPP. And the last thing I'll mention is that we work in collaboration with all of the other fire safe councils. They all do amazing work in their areas, so please reach out to your local fire safe councils. Reach out to us. More of your homework is to sign up for the newsletter, reach out, sign up for an assessment. Everything is no cost, so there's really no harm for this. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me? Good. Well, I'm Christopher Danch. I'm the Executive Director of the Ojai Valley Fire Safe Council. I have to go fast, too, because 5 minutes isn't very long. While the whole county is at risk from wildfire, the Ojai Valley is of particular risk, having been rated by Headwaters Economics as being the top 1% in the nation at risk. So it's one of the most fire-prone communities in the nation, let alone the state. And everything that makes a community vulnerable to wildfire risk, Ojai has in spades. So we've taken our mission to look at how to raise community capacity to better prepare for, respond to, and recover from a catastrophic wildfire event. So we're aiming for those big fires, That's that 2 or 3% of the fires that do 98% of the damage. And one of the factors about those fires is that they are, by their nature and by definition, uncontrollable, which means that it's up to the community to do its share to protect itself in addition to our public agencies. And I'll get to the hydrated watershed at the very end. We have completed our Ojai Valley CWPP, or Community Wildfire Protection Plan. It covers basically the watershed, the Ventura River watershed. We've added some other areas over towards Santa Paula for evacuation concerns and also ignition concerns. But it is an extensive document. It supplements the countywide CWPP that has been updated by Ventura Regional. Accompanying that document is a fine-scale risk mapping project that backed it. That is now on display on our digital dashboard. I'll get to that in a second. We also have a countywide embercast modeling and mapping project. So understand the threat of embercast, which is what burns most houses down in a fire. And we also have an evacuation assessment that was done, which we're now working on the results of that assessment. In the preparation of this document, we had technical advisory groups and a lot of collaborators. Here's a list of those. So it was an extensive collaboration with both the agencies involved, organizations, and with community as well. As this digital dashboard, you're welcome to go to our website and you can log on to this thing. And it is destined to be the central wildfire database hub for the county. Already there's countywide. Ventura Regional and other members of the collaborative that we have in the county contribute to this. And the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative, which is all of us, the RCD and the fire department, are responsible for the management of this. Our current projects, won't go through all of them, we'll go through the top two. One is our Ojai Valley Community Resilience Project. That is the formation of 2 resilience centers in our valley that will be 2 functions: emergency preparedness, response, and recovery. That includes mass care shelter capacity, so they're formal evacuation centers of some size, and also to have programming and services year-round that help promote and build overall community resilience. We have an ongoing program, Graze Ojai, talk about that in a second, and we're with the collaborative doing a large-scale fuel reduction project. The Community Resilience Project is a phased grant program. We're in the first phase of planning. There's the core functions, and we're covering the watershed with these. Ultimately, our goal is to build social cohesion, which is the #1 factor of community resilience in the face of disaster. Graze Ojai is our community-supported prescribed grazing program, and it has many aspects to it. One is, of course, vegetation management and fuel reduction, but also to, hopefully, over time at scale, improve soil health, which we'll get to in a second with the watershed. There's many benefits of prescribed grazing that are both wildfire risk mitigation, but also ecological health, and those two go hand in hand. And they also have a role in our resilience centers in hoping to relocalize food and fiber more so than we have. Part of the grazing program is to create a large-scale corridor that is around the Ojai Valley and the watershed. We call that a wildfire intensity reduction zone. That is in the process of mapping and planning. And in our fuel reduction project, we're going to get to the end here really quickly. We're focusing in Ojai on this particular round on large-scale removal of hazardous trees. And then looking back on the reflections of the LA fires and at looking at the projects that help mitigate this urban conflagration, which is now rearisen in our, as Assemblyman Bennett referred to, we used to have Chicago burned down because someone kicked over a thing. Now we have embers landing and burning down entire cities. We've got to look at why that's happening. And we have elements of an urban conflagration that we have to concern ourselves with, and that is aridity and winds and densely packed structures. But you ask yourself, in the Wheeler fire of '85, same fuel load, in fact, greater fuel load, just as dry, just as old, and the same built environment. What's happened? There are 2 different worlds, those 2 fires. No structures lost in the Wheeler fire, thousands lost in the Thomas fire. So We're looking at what is that about, and that comes back to looking at our watershed and what is the difference we have here. So in addition to our infrastructure of tanks and hydrants and everything, all that's incredibly important. But also, what's the difference in our watershed, in our watersheds in this state that can have a single ember burn a city down? How does that happen? We're taking a hard look at this as an infrastructure issue, because if you have good soil and you have healthy plants, they don't burn as easily. And droughts today are different than droughts in the past. We have things called vapor pressure deficits and other matters that make droughts worse today. So this is a question we're taking a hard look at, and happy to talk about this to anybody after this. And I believe my time is up. Thank you for listening to me.
All right. What's that? Yeah. Great to have these resources, right? The only thing we wish is with each one of these aspects, whether we're talking about the legislation, whether we're talking about hardening, or they answer your questions or having them on, we'd like to have more time. And we don't, but what our goal was is to make sure they had enough time to let you know roughly what they do and how valuable they are. And so how about one more round of applause for all three of them? Thank you. Thank you very much. We meet. Yeah, he's on next. Okay. Worried that we forgot a panelist, but he's in the next. That's the insurance program, right? That we have coming up next. But we really need a proactive Ventura County Fire Department. We need proactive Ventura City and Oxnard City and all of our municipal firefighters. We need proactive fire safe councils that are out there. Really appreciate the collaboration. In the state of California, Ventura County is known as one of the most collaborative counties out there. There isn't the same kind of infighting and tension between agencies that there is other places, and we see it exemplified over and over again, and tonight's just another example of that. I do want to point a few things out real quickly before we go into the questions. One, since everybody can't ask their questions, we have question and comment cards. If you write your question onto your comment card. Also, we're going to, after this program, ask for your feedback. What kind of things worked well for tonight? What kind of things would you suggest for us to do better? But take advantage of those comment and question cards that are out there. The second thing is, I did want to point out a couple statistics just so you know part of where we're going. But we have a lot of questions that have come in online about drones. I think there's a perception that drones are magic technology that'll be able to address this. Drones will be an important part of moving forward. They won't be, but they won't be the total solution, certainly. Very difficult. This is obviously a difficult thing to deal with, all of these ignition starts that are out there. But California, we've expanded our aerial firefighting fleet. We have the largest firefighting fleet on the globe. And the whole world is right here in California. I mean, it's something that's being taken seriously. We've just added 16 more helicopters, with several of them equipped for night operations. I sat on my deck and watched the Santa Clara River, 15 acres on fire in the Santa Clara River, and a half a dozen helicopters come in the middle of the night and attack that and knock that 15 acres down. At the same time, the winds were wailing and Los Angeles was burning. They were able to catch a fire. Now, these night fighting helicopters will tell you an interesting thing. That's the best time to fight a fire. The winds usually die down. It's cooler. The humidity goes up a little bit. And these night flying helicopters, you're going to see a significant increased investment in those helicopters and in helicopter bases. We've assumed ownership of 7 C-30 air tankers that are out there, those big things that have been out there dropping. A couple other quick points. The Ventura County Fire Representative talked about the 100-foot clearance. Back in I still remember this, back in 2017, at the beginning of the year, my friends from the Midwest called me and said, "Oh, you guys burn all the time out there." And I said, it looks good on TV, but when we burn, we never lose any structures in Ventura County because we have 100-foot, because we really enforced the 100-foot clearance, right? And then the Thomas Fire came. But I was elected county supervisor in 2000. In 2017, we pretty much didn't have any structures at all burned. Now look at where we are, after that. So 100 feet doesn't work any longer. And that's why we have to take these other measures, harden the home. And what is coming, I just want everybody to be aware of those 5 million homes that I talked about. The 5-foot zero zone is going to hurt. And what it's going to hurt is everybody emotionally, not financially, right? But we're struggling at my house with me putting on this program about the bougainvillea that is growing right next to the house that I planted when I first got there, and I said it's my favorite plant, and it's got to go, right? But think of all the conversations, that picture there, you saw how much difference, Stephen was able to show us in that picture. We have to do it. The state of California has already made it the law that 5 feet from the house has to be zone zero, no vegetation that can burn. The problem is the actual regulation has to be written. It's already been passed by the legislature, signed by the governor. The regulation has to be written. And quite frankly, the agencies are just terrified to write the regulations because they know what kind of blowback there will be. I'm hoping that we have more ambassadors out there to say, we all got to grow up. I mean, we can't have our favorite plant put the rest of our neighborhood at risk. Because if your house catches on fire, it's millions of embers that will come from just that one house, millions that'll flood your neighborhood, right? And so those are the kind of things when I talk about the opposition and the difficulty in terms of getting things to happen. So we've written that. Get ready for it. Psychologically, start the divorce that needs to come with those favored plants and all of those things. But psychologically get ready. The regulations will come, and they'll come even faster now because of what happened to Los Angeles. And then I'm going to read this and then open this up to questions. But this is somebody that it wrote a question in, and they didn't write a question, they made a comment. But I think it's very appropriate for us to hear this. My neighborhood was a casualty of the mountain fire. That's Camarillo, about 240 structures burned, about 180 homes, right? He said, my neighbor's house burned down. We were very lucky that our home did not burn. That said, we spent quite a bit of money making our home fire hardened. So we felt amply justified in that work giving us these results. Now that we've been through the experience of preparing a home for the dangers of wildfire, it's painfully obvious that most homes aren't ready. This is somebody who took the time. But I'll tell you this, on our street, right, during the Thomas Fire, all 5 houses across the street from us burned down. The 4 houses on our side of the street, I was there, we were able to put out the spot fires. And not one of those 4 houses burnt down, but every one of them caught on fire. Every one of them, at least the deck was on fire. I'm not talking about just a little tiny plant, but the deck was on fire. But because we were there. In Australia, they're having people that stay, they have more success. I'm not saying that we have to do it like Australia or whatever, but I am saying this whole issue of hardening and trying to figure out what to do with these spot fires, we can do better than what we're doing right now, certainly. And so with that, I'm going to turn it open to some questions. I'm going to go further back, all right? I'm going to go 1, 2, and you're the lucky 3, and I'll try to get to 4. And I'll try 5, but I can't guarantee. 1, shoot, quick. Here we go. Speak right into the end of it. Everybody, speak into the end like that.
Thank you. I'm a resident of the mountain fire, and I'm wondering, do we know the cause yet of the fire? I noticed, like with the Thomas Fire, there seemed to be a line of demarcation where the orchards were. They seemed to create a barrier, a natural barrier. in the case of the mountain fire, the ignition point was right amongst the orchards, and I wondered if we know anything from fire.
Thank you, ma'am. That's a good question. There is an active investigation underway. They have made a lot of progress. It hasn't been publicly released yet, but I anticipate that coming in the very near future. There's been a whole team working on that investigation, and they have a pretty good idea of how it caused. They just want to clean it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And in follow-up to that with the fire department, should we stage water trucks when we have the life-threatening wind events? These were life-threatening when we were getting the notifications days in advance of the mountain fire, especially in unincorporated areas.
Joe, I don't know if you want to. I can tell you, our fire chief. As a board of supervisors, we get notices from our fire department when these red flag warnings are issued, and they give us just step-by-step points of all of the preparation and the planning they're doing in advance of these significant weather conditions. Joe, do you want to talk briefly about some of the work that goes on in terms of personnel and equipment that gets staffed in advance?
Yeah, I'll just say that when we have a particularly dangerous situation, red flag, there's usually a corresponding increase in fire department staffing that occurs. That occurred prior to the mountain fire as well. As far as staging, if you're saying staging our trucks, I mean, we upstaff a number of personnel in the department. As far as the water goes, we do have water tenders, and we use everything that we have, and we do upstaff when we see the conditions warrant it.
Thank you for having the town hall tonight. My question is to the assembly member about AB 1143. I'm curious about what agency is going to actually regulate the certification process.
That's exactly what we're asking the fire marshal to come up with the process for the state fire marshal to come up with the process for certification. So the fire marshal, that we need this to be a process that everybody can trust, and so we want the fire marshal to talk with all the major stakeholders and say, what's the process? Who should be doing this, et cetera? To be determined, right? Number 3.
Thank you. There's a substance I learned about 3 years ago. I've been following it. It's reported on in the Montecito Journal August 6th, just 8 months ago. I would encourage you all to learn and read about it. It's called Citrotech. It's composed of food, grade, constituents, and water. It disturbs the oxygen leg of fire on a molecular level, which water does not do. The EPA has given it its Safer Choice certification, and the San Diego Fire Rescue, with grant money, has already been spraying homeless encampments with it. They've had no fires, and we know that the homeless light fires to stay warm. They're also going to be spraying exit corridors with this substance. They're also doing home hardening, and
Great.
Sir, I would hope that you would have in Sacramento a bill that would give a tax credit for people who invest in a wildfire defense system for their homes. And you can learn more just by going to citrosafe.com. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I'll catch you. And who's number 5? I know that's number 4, but who's number 5? Right over there for number 5, right? I want to respond to 2 of these things when we get through these 2 questions real quick. Yeah.
Okay. I live up in Ondolando, and like you, about half my neighbors lost their homes, and we know that was Edison power lines. What I didn't hear tonight, I heard a lot of good stuff, but I didn't hear preventing the fires. How do we prevent the fires from happening in the first place? Is there any active movement on undergrounding power lines that are up on the hillside? We have power lines in our neighborhood that have weeds 5 foot high under them. We've had transformer fires. We've had a telephone pole fall over before. Nothing seems to be addressed.
So
there,
let me answer your question.
Of a lot of these fires.
An enormous effort is being is underway with Pacific Gas and Electric, which is all of the electricity utilities in Northern California, Southern California, Edison. They're investing literally billions and billions of dollars in doing that. It's just that it's so massive. It's such a big project to take on, and it is causing our electricity rates to go higher and higher. And so part of what I'm saying is there's going to be a significant effort there, but are we going to, if they do have the fire, we have to do everything we can to try to keep that from happening. But I think, that realistically, we have to make sure that when the fire does happen, electric strike or utility lines, that we don't burn as much. That's what I'm going to focus on. I'm focused on the other side. In fact, it's through my budget committee that I chair, the funding for these programs that try to encourage us happens. But it's just not going to happen fast enough, and it's going to be never ending. You have to never ending keep clearing the land underneath these utilities and all of that stuff. If we harden, it's sort of like a one-time big investment, and then we're there. Number 5.
Hi, thank you for having this evening. What can you say to those of us who live in manufactured home communities? I don't have 100 feet, that I can defend because we live so close together. And I know in the Palisades fire, a whole community burned down, those manufactured homes. I own my home, even though I don't own the land. But so what can you say to us about how can we harden our homes?
Every community is going to have some unique aspects to it. The Ojai Valley has unique aspects to it. Every community, and that's why we have to pull together and work together. But a mobile home community could become much better protected if everybody works together in there. What kind of vegetation is there? How many palm trees do you have? Should you get rid of those palm trees? They're one of the worst, There are things that you can do. What kind of barriers do you have around there? How much do you have a team of able-bodied people that are ready to stamp out those embers right off the bat when they come? Those kind of things.
I think we can do that, but we don't own the land, so we're owned by some big company in Chicago. So how do we get them to respond?
And I think Supervisor has something he wants to say with that. But you can still work with your property owner there for that. Right? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a model out there to follow because there's the Golden Oaks community in Miramonte, what actually became a Firewise community, and it's a manufactured home community right off Rice Road in the Ojai Valley, and they did it, and I believe it was with both, and I know. See, Andy was there. You were part of that. And I think if you reach out to the Firewise councils, they can put you in touch with the residents of that community and teach you how they did it. But they became a designated Firewise community. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but we're just going to have to go on. We'll catch some other folks here. But I do want to respond to a couple of people who had questions. I have a multi-step plan, which somebody referred to the brochure. Only people in the high fire risk areas receive that, so not everybody knows what you're talking about. But I've identified a 7-step plan that deals with things. And one part of my bill with the accreditation program is to try to say, this is what I hope, I don't know that it's going to pass, but that the money you spend to harden your home, if it is to get certified, only if it's to get certified, then doesn't cause your property tax bill to go up because you hardened your home, right? That's an example. We also have 2 different funding mechanisms to try to help water districts pay for some of the infrastructure improvements that I identified, in that first bill. So we're trying to be really comprehensive as we go forward, and we have each one of, and I forget the other question over there. We have each one of those steps as we go forward. I'm sorry, but we're behind here. You look so anxious. I'm gonna put you on, right? Okay, here we go.
I have a 1925 house and a big palm tree right above it. And I'm just wondering, is my house made stucco over wood more protective than anybody else's?
If her house is made of stucco rather than wood, even though it was built in 1925 with a palm tree, I'm sure you've got the exact answer to that question without any investigation. And it's something we'll hold you legally liable for in terms of your answer. Right? So
yes,
go ahead.
If you sign
Chris.
the waiver and release form right down here,
They just need more information to be able to answer your question, man.
Yes. Having a non-flammable exterior like stucco will increase.
Is stucco better than wood?
Well, that's
stucco
true.
over wood.
Most homes that are stuccoed are wood framed homes. That's the vast majority of homes. So stucco over wood is much better than wood siding or some other flammable siding. So yes, it is more protective of that.
It's
other
better.
factors can determine the ignitability of your structure, but that is actually a benefit.
It's better than just straight wood, but it's a far cry from having it be hardened because it's still wood structure. It's the vents that are the issue, right? Exactly. All right, I think I'm going to turn this over to my great colleague.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And we have one more panel we want to introduce, and this is the insurance panel, which I know is a big concern to many of you. I get frequent emails. It's a big issue for all of us who have homes in this county. We've seen the impacts of what's happening with fire insurance. And so with that, there's two people I want to introduce. And the first is Rob Obedoza, who is the outreach analyst with the California Department of Insurance. And he is going to talk about the state's efforts to address insurance non-renewals and what the state's doing to try to expand insurance access. And then also on Zoom, and I know he's being brought on, we have Joel Lauscher, who is a consumer advocate with United Policyholders, a nonprofit that works with residents and homeowners on the challenges of the insurance market right now, specifically as to non-renewals. And so, Rob, Joel, thank you. And I think, Rob, we will start with you.
Absolutely. So thank you, Supervisor, and thank you, Assemblymember, for having me today. My name is Rob Obedoza. I am the outreach analyst for the Department of Insurance. I am the insurance lead for here in Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, and parts of Los Angeles, which includes the coast of Malibu and specifically the Palisades as well. And, in the aftermath of the fires in Southern California, we've seen the importance of insurance's role in the recovery process, whether it comes to debris removal, personal belongings, additional living expenses, cleanup, and of course the rebuilding process. But right now, Californians across the state are finding it harder and harder to find insurance to protect what matters most to them. So today, I'm going to talk about some of the state of California, or the Department of Insurance's efforts to hopefully alleviate the insurance market and provide more options to Californians across the state. So, in the past 20 years or so, we've seen a growing frequency and severity of wildfires and climate-related disasters occurring, and insurance companies have basically found it difficult to properly assess risk and future losses across the state. In addition to rising inflation, increased cost to rebuild, reinsurance costs, insurers wanting to protect their current policyholders, all have resulted in fewer options and rising costs. And as a result, many of the major companies in California have either stopped or limited writing new policies across the state. This has left homeowners with fewer options, forcing many onto the insurer of last resort, which is the California Fair Plan. As a matter of fact, the Fair Plan has more than tripled in growth between 2020 and 2024. And the Fair Plan was initially meant for super high-risk properties with no other options. However, more and more homeowners are turning to the Fair Plan due to not having any other options in the market. And right now, with the Fair Plan, we don't really want a high concentration of homeowners in the Fair Plan because the Fair Plan does charge more for less coverage. And they're allowed to charge more and higher rates because, again, they are taking on the highest risk properties across the state. They're taking on that risk, and they have to reflect that in their rates. So in addition to some of the things that we've just talked about, some of the AM Best, which is the accrediting agency, has downgraded the outlooks for the top 12 companies in the state of California, which has affected their financial standing. And we can't compel insurance companies to write in policies across the state. So right now, insurance companies will not write in high-risk policies unless they can cover 100% of their claims, their expenses, and earn a fair rate of return. Rate filings are more complex and can take longer than 6 months to review, and one entity can unreasonably prolong rate filings. No other states has this, which is called the intervenor process. So all of this, along with, everything else that I had mentioned earlier is how we got to the insurance market today. And again, the biggest factor in these insurance companies not writing in these higher risk areas is assessing wildfire risk. And a couple of years ago, Commissioner Ricardo Lara introduced what are called the Safer from Wildfires regulations, or Safer from Wildfires guidelines, which are basically a 10-step process to help homeowners and neighborhoods attack the root cause of what insurance companies are looking at, which is increased wildfire risk. And along with these Safer from Wildfires guidelines, we introduced first in the nation insurance discounts for wildfire mitigation. And we also introduced transparency in the wildfire risk score process, so you can see exactly how your property is being rated by your insurance company and take action to improve that wildfire risk score. Now, as part of the 10-step process for this Safer from Wildfires regulation, a lot of these steps include a lot of the things that several of the panelists have already kind of talked about today, which includes having the proper Class A fire-rated roof, that 5-foot ember-resistant zone around your structure, the non-combustible 6 inches at the bottom of your home, that zone 0 that we've been talking about all evening, the ember and fire-resistant vents, again, having the proper openings on those vents, as was mentioned earlier, double-pane windows or added shutters, and enclosed eaves. Now, once you focus on your mitigation from your home, you extend that out to your immediate surroundings, which is clearing vegetation and debris, should be from under your decks, moving sheds and outbuildings at least 30 feet away, trimming trees and removing brush in compliance with state and local defensible space laws. And then, of course, as has been emphasized throughout today's presentations, is also being part of a community-wide mitigation effort, whether that's forming a Firewise USA community or being part of a fire risk reduction community as well. Now, to also modernize the California's insurance market, the commissioner has also introduced what is called the Sustainable Insurance Strategy, which is designed to help California to increase accessibility for insurance within the state of California and provide more options for homeowners. And we want to create a resilient insurance market to make sure we don't slide back into some of the issues that we've been facing in the past few years. And we also want to protect communities from climate change. So part of the Sustainable Insurance Strategy, again, is improving the department's rate application approval process. One of the issues with insurance companies and having that rate approval process taking quite some time is that by the time that their rate approvals are approved, then that data has already been 1.5 years, 2 years old, and they've got to refile, and you know they're playing catch up with the current conditions in the market. We've also introduced new climate risk management tools in rate making to modernize some of the tools that insurance companies are using to assess risk in the state of California. Some of these tools that have been being used across the state, and California is finally adopting some of these things, which includes catastrophe modeling, which is basically a data-driven, modern approach to risk assessment and California-only reinsurance costs. We've streamlined the intervener process to allow third parties to review rate increases by these insurance companies. We've also continued to modernize the FAIR Plan because although the goal for the state of California is to move homeowners off of the FAIR Plan and back into the open insurance market, we want the FAIR Plan to continue to be a viable options for those properties who don't have any other options available. And because of these changes and because of these updated regulations, we've secured insurer commitments for them to write more policies in wildfire distressed areas. So in order for these insurance companies to continue doing business in the state of California and use these modern tools, we're requiring insurance companies to write no less than 85% of the homes and businesses in distressed areas and reduce FAIR Plan policies in order to achieve greater insurance availability for consumers. Again, so because of these changes that we've implemented, which is part of the biggest changes since Prop 103 was introduced about 30 plus years ago, we've got commitments from the insurance companies to write more policies in those high risk areas. Now, Assemblymember Bennett has talked about some of the legislation proposals that he's got on deck. And across the state, several other legislators have taken action to help mitigate the wildfire risk within the state of California. Just for time's purpose, I'm going to just kind of cover a couple of these, not going to cover all of these. The first one, the California Safe Homes Act, Assembly Bill 888, that is to provide tax-free grants to homeowners to directly apply that towards wildfire mitigation towards your homes. Business insurance protection is Senate Bill 547. That's to, so in the aftermath of a state of emergency, the insurance commissioner declares an insurance moratorium so homeowners affected do not get canceled or non-renewed by their insurance carriers for at least 1 year. And that Senate bill is looking to extend that to commercial properties, apartment buildings, senior living facilities that are not currently covered by that moratorium. Let's see here, which are the other ones? There's the Insurance Payment Protection Act, which caps the amount that public adjusters fees in the aftermath of a state of emergency to 15%. Eliminate the List Act, Senate Bill 495. That's a big one right now in the Palisades because as those homes who have suffered a total loss, their insurance companies are asking them to provide them an itemized list of all their belongings that they lost in order to collect their insurance proceeds. And at the department, we feel that's kind of like inhumane to ask somebody who's just lost everything to go back and try to inventory everything that they lost. So that Senate Bill 495 is going to require insurance companies to pay out all of their contents coverage without requiring that itemized list. And again, there's a whole host of legislative proposals that the Department of Insurance and Commissioner Lara supports. You can definitely check those out and read on those legislative texts as more information comes out. But right now, also our focus at the Department of Insurance is on disaster recovery, making sure that those who have been affected by these wildfires are getting their insurance proceeds, getting their benefits, and starting that recovery process with the funds that they need. Nearly 20,000 claims have already been partially paid. Almost $7 billion has already gone out to survivors. And honestly, since I've submitted this slideshow a couple of days ago, I got an update yesterday that right now over $12 billion has been paid out to the survivors of those wildfires. And that hasn't even started with the actual rebuilding process of those communities. So that number is going to continue to increase. And also, we're doing a lot of outreach to make sure that we're helping those in the community to make sure they're able to get their insurance questions answered. We've hosted insurance workshops in the Palisades and the Altadena areas to get those consumers help, and even talk to their insurance companies directly at those insurance workshops and walk out with checks in hand to start that recovery rebuilding process. We've hosted town halls such as this, rebuilding events across at the city, county, state, and federal level. We're an ever-present presence at the disaster recovery centers and some of the emergency actions that the commissioner has taken in the aftermath of these wildfires. And in every wildfire is, again, that non-renewal moratorium, paying out full contents coverage for those payments, issuing guidelines on smoke damage and habitability, and fraud prevention. So, you know, we're doing what we can to alleviate some of the issues in the California insurance market, and we understand that everyone is frankly frustrated with the lack of options and the increase in prices. But right now, our goal is to make sure that there's a lot more options in the insurance market and have those insurance companies competing for your dollar again, so you don't have to settle for the fair plan, and then we can hopefully drive those prices down. And also, you know, as the Department of Insurance, as a state regulatory agency, you know, we also handle any consumer complaints if you're having issues with your insurance company. So if you are having issues with filing a claim, your insurance company has been non-communicative, you don't agree with what the insurance settlement is going to look like, give us a call. We can file a claim on your behalf. We can go through the complaint process, contact your insurer on your behalf, and investigate the issues at hand. So give us a call, pay us a visit us on some various social media platforms. And yeah, that's all I have today. I'll stick around to answer any questions that you guys might have. Oh, thank you.
Hey, Joel, are you there online?
I am.
Okay, we are ready for you to begin.
Okay, thank you. All right, hello, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. My name is Joel Lotcher. I work for United Policyholders, a nonprofit that helps people with insurance issues. And I'm going to give you
Hey, Joel, can I cut you off
Yes.
real quick? We're having a little problem with the sound in the room. Is there any way you could speak a little closer to the microphone, or?
Certainly. Is this better?
Not real, a little.
Oh, I'm the only person in this room, but okay.
Can
Maybe
IT
if I'm
move it
loud,
up in the-
does that help?
Give us 1 sec, Joel. We're gonna see if we can up the audio in the room here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Why don't you try again?
Okay, are you ready to go?
That's better. Thank you. Yes,
Okay,
you're all
thank you.
set.
All right, so I'm going to also talk about insurance. Thanks, Rob. I'm going to talk from the perspective of United Policyholders, a nonprofit that helps people with an array of insurance issues, including this one of a challenging insurance market. So next slide, please. United Policyholders started after the Oakland fire, helping people work through their claims issues. Since then, we've contributed to helping consumers in an array of post-catastrophe settings from Florida and Hawaii and Colorado, and many major wildfires here in California. We're totally funded by contributions, grants, donations, that type of thing. We don't charge the people that we assist anything. So we're just here to help. Again, it's nonprofit. Next slide, please. So I want to give an example of give people a little more understanding of how rates and insurance kind of play out. State Farm kind of got a highly publicized rate increase of 20%, a bit ago, probably over a year ago now. But typically only single-digit increases have gone through. But this one got through at 20%. It was approved by the Department of Insurance because State Farm was able to prove that it warranted this level of increase. But just for people to understand, a 20% overall increase is really just an average. And just to point that out, I've given some examples of different zip codes in terms of how the average increases in those zip codes will play out. You can see here for Ventura, that 20% played out as 24%. But even that, again, is an average. There will be people in there that might have an 80% increase and some that might have a 15% increase. On this list are some other places that I have recently given presentations. I see Ventura's on there twice, but Ojai, I did a in-person presentation to recently. The overall average of that 20% rate increase as it played out in Ojai was a 64.2% on average increase. So again, not everybody got 64.2%, but some got more and some got less, and 64% is the average. So you can see how these rate increases play out very differently from one community to the next. And again, it's not just State Farm now asking for these major increases. Allstate has a 30% rate increase, maybe near approval, or maybe it's been approved. State Farm has another 30% increase request in the works. You may have seen press about that already, that State Farm is willing to accept 22% on average, but that hasn't, to my knowledge, been approved yet. but presumably they will, come to an agreement with the Department of Insurance somewhere in the double digits. And that will play out on top of all these increases that State Farm got in its last increase. So next slide, please. And kind of to give a sense of really how those percentages work, you see here just a satellite, map image of Ventura, a city of Ventura. And you can see those two red circles very close together in this one little section of the map. And what I'm intending to capture here is insurers now use wildfire risk scores, and they use them everywhere, not out in the forest. These are in play right in urban settings. And in the center of each of these red circles, you see there is a home. The idea is to focus on there's a home in each one of those circles. And those two homes are maybe only a block apart. And yet they may have a significantly different wildfire score, because those wildfire scores are based on, as mentioned here, slope, fuel, access, but a little further up the hill and a little further closer to a fuel source, such as a forest or a grassland, can make a very significant difference in the score that a home receives. So one home, may be eligible for coverage and pays a lower rate. The other home, up a little higher up the hill, may pay either a higher rate or it may not be eligible for coverage. So that's kind of a new phenomena in these last, let's say, 20 years. So it's not, an immediately new thing. It's been happening for a while, but it is a big change in these last few years of how insurance has played out. When, years ago, those two homes would have had the same score, because there wouldn't have been a wildfire score, it just would have been their protection class and their zip code, that type of thing. But now there's a significant difference potentially in both rate and eligibility, just on being a few houses away. Next slide, please. And yet another innovation. So that last one was about doing satellite imagery to come up with wildfire scores. Now insurers are also using aerial imagery, and this is just intended to represent that. You can see from this image that the insurer gets a lot closer look at the home, and say a more granular look, more detail. And in this picture, you can see that an insurer would be able to see that there are tree limbs protruding out over the roof line. Now, probably most of you now know that this is a no-no in insurance language. They're going to want either those tree limbs removed, or they might non-renew coverage for this home. So, in this case, it looks like it might be an old oak tree, a classic major tree that's probably a beautiful thing, but could cause a non-renewal. So you're kind of going to be faced with the issue of carving off the major limbs from this tree or losing your insurance coverage. And of course, it's not just the oak tree in this shot. To the rear of the home, you see there's, more, maybe a hillside, more tree limbs. And of course, insurers don't have to send anyone out to inspect this to make this determination. And, you want to make sure if your insurer does cite you for something like this in a non-renewal notice, you want to make sure they have it right. Is this true? Is this true about my property? And you want to, immediately contact the insurer if they have the wrong home in their picture, or if you've removed those tree limbs, right? If you're getting a non-renewal notice due to some vegetation and you address the issue that the insurer is pointing out, you want to immediately communicate that to the insurer. And if they aren't agreeable to moving ahead with your renewal, you want to immediately contact the Department of Insurance. Next slide, please. So one of the changes we're going to see in our marketplace, kind of mentioned, I think, a little bit by the Department of Insurance presentation there, is we are going to have changes in the rate regulations that apply to insurers' requests for approvals for rate increases. The changes are going to allow insurers to use catastrophe model projections of future losses rather than historic loss histories, and pass through their reinsurance costs. So what does that mean? That means that insurance is likely to get a lot more expensive. So on top of those rate increases that you saw highlighted in the State Farm situation, there is more to come. The point of allowing these higher premiums is to increase the availability of coverage. So, that is the hope that we are kind of, I guess, counting on at this point, because these regulations are moving forward. And hopefully we're going to see insurers willing to write a lot of homes they're currently turning down, because they will be able to get a lot higher premium for those homes.
Joel,
next slide, please.
Joel, we're going to need you to move through your slides really quickly. You're
okay.
over
the
your
next
time
one
here.
is just discounts. We've already talked about those this evening. They're coming into play. There's a whole list, safer from wildfire. Hopefully you all do those. Next slide, please. And just a couple of tips to save money, or one at least, is to raise your deductible. If you still have a $500 or $1,000 deductible that you put in place 20 years ago when you got your coverage, we suggest that you move that number up significantly, because you're not going to want to make a $500 or $1,000 claim and risk someone coming out and finding fault with your premises. Take as high of a deductible as you reasonably can absorb. Next slide, please. And if you're non-renewed, hopefully you can check out our website. Don't rely on a single agent to just, be able to find you coverage. If they say, I can't find coverage, I'll put you in the FAIR plan. You need to contact many agents. There's a lot of information on the United Policyholders website. Next slide, please. And I'll mention the department website as well, Department of Insurance website, including that top 10 tips. For example, the 800 number of every insurer, admitted insurer that writes homeowners coverage in California is one of the things on that top 10 tips.
It's time,
you want to
Joel.
do. Yeah. Is that it? Okay, I'll just mention you want to be with an admitted carrier. I won't explain all these, but if you possibly can, FAIR Plan is financially secure. Admitted insurers are financially secure. You're taking more of a risk with a non-admitted insurer who also has no rate restrictions, but you really need to check their financial ratings. Next slide, please.
Joel, do you have a slide that shows how people can get a hold of you?
Yes.
Could you put that
there's one right there, uphelp.org. This is on the California Fire.
There you go.
California
Everybody
Fair Plan.
Use your
the
phones
next slide.
and take a picture of that slide, folks, before it goes. All right. That's uphelp.org/CFP for somebody that can't see the slide or whatever.
Next
and Joe,
slide.
we're going to have to leave it at that. Oh, there we go. You got it again. But
and then
Joe,
next slide,
we're going to
please.
have to leave it at that, Joel.
There you
Thank
go.
you. All right. Great. So how about a big hand for Joel? So again, we're trying to give you a flavor for what's out there. We really appreciate the Insurance Commissioner's Office. They are swamped with requests for people to talk to them, as you could imagine right now. And then the same thing for the Consumer Advocacy Group. But many people are not aware of the Consumer Advocacy Group. They're out there. They have a good reputation in terms of being able to try to get you some unbiased information to complement what's going on with the insurance commissioner. So I have a few things I need to point out before we go to our last round of questions. And first of all, there is no free lunch. And we just saw that here, right? $12 billion has been paid out in Los Angeles, and that's not for building any homes yet. That's just for contents and rent and all the other things that everybody needs, right? We're all in it together, and there's just a huge trade-off there. The risk score, they talked about your risk score up there, right? One of the things that happens is people are advocating and saying, well, if I do this one thing, I want to get a cut in my insurance rates, right? Well, if that one thing doesn't really harden your home very much, right, then if they get that discount, the costs are going to be paid. They're going to be passed around. Certainly, all of us want to make sure the insurance companies don't make inappropriate, obscene profits off of this. But if insurance companies aren't making appropriate profits, we will not have insurance at all. And so you see these rate increases going up. Believe me, if the insurance commissioner could see that these were leading to obscene profits, the insurance commissioner wouldn't be approving these things. But they're being approved because we have obscene losses, right? And that's what we have to focus on. If we don't do that, literally, the livelihood of the state of California is at stake here. And you saw the list of all the bills up there that the insurance commissioner was nice enough to put up. I would point out to you, many of those bills are focused on trying to say, for example, you don't have to list the contents. The insurance company just has to pay you. Very appropriate bill, I understand that. But the bottom line is it means the insurance companies now have to pay the max of the contents, even though their formula used to say, normally we pay about, 60% or whatever number they came up with. Well, that increased cost for the insurance company, we're all going to have to pay. It's easy for us in a democracy to say, the insurance company's got to pay for all of this stuff, and I don't want to pay very much for insurance. But we have to recognize, again, that we're all in this together. So when it comes to the risk score, I'm going to be advocating and really pushing, and we need lots of people to push that say the risk score, you ought to get a big bonus if you do the complete hardening. That's the thing that we need to incentivize. And you saw the great list that was put up there. It's real clear how you harden your home, right? Roof, windows, zero, and take care of your vents. You've got it, right? Different costs depending on your home, and some people have some of these things done already, et cetera. But certainly the vegetation is the easiest thing to take care of and try to move along. So those were sort of my points about where we need to go. And the reason we had this tonight is to say in every county, they need to start to have this conversation about a true change in the culture and the norms that we have. We have to start thinking about this as we're all in it together. If there was a virus sweeping through the community and we could all solve it by all taking some action, right? That's exactly what this is. We need herd immunity for wildfires moving into communities. We could dramatically decrease that loss, but we need lots of voices speaking up, people writing letters to the editor, people talking to people in other counties to try to get this to happen, right? And so it takes me to these things, these points I want to make. First one is, I noticed when Stephen asked a question on the quiz, more people put their hands up than Stephen was expecting, right? And it's because the people that come to this kind of thing are above average, right? You already know a lot about this stuff, and you're interested because you're interested, et cetera. And so we have a responsibility in our neighborhoods, on our streets, to make sure that we get everybody else on the street as aware as possible. Don't hesitate to have a meeting of the people on your street to start to have these conversations while legislation is passing in terms of how to incentivize this. But you don't need anything more than tonight. And this is the classic line, you don't need a life-threatening illness to decide to live for the moment, right? Well, you don't need your neighborhood to burn down before you decide to organize your neighborhood, right? They're doing it in Ondalanda now, but don't wait. Go ahead and get started, right? we're going to try to keep you informed of everything as much as we can. And so please let us have your email so that we can talk to you about the legislation, things that are going on that are out there. There will be a series of bills, and the series of bills that I'm going to associate myself with are the ones that simply focus on one thing: decrease future losses. Get our trend line going down is the best way to get our insurance rates to go down. We have to be able to demonstrate that after 10 years, we actually have a trend line, a falling trend line in terms of average losses each year. People have asked online, many people have asked about barrancas. Barrancas are oftentimes controlled by the Watershed Protection District, but not always. It's whoever owns that barranca is the one that has responsibility. But I don't want to suggest that it's easy, because there's all kinds of permitting and when can you clear and when can you not clear. But they are healthy conversations to have, particularly barrancas in heavily populated areas. They're healthy conversations to have. Find out who owns the barranca and start raising those questions as neighbors in terms of that barranca. And then finally, somebody said, could you put that slide back up or whatever? All of this is going to be posted on my website, so you can go back and look at any one of these PowerPoints or hear any one of these comments as you go forward. So we'll leave that posted up there, so feel free to go jump on there if you need to do that. And now with that, we're close to the end of the program, and it ends with you guys, and we're going to take a few more questions, and people who have not asked a question yet, and we haven't done anybody in the back yet. I'm going to look. There's one. And there's 2, 3, 4, and 5. All righty. So 1, where are you? And where's 2? Put 2. Put your hand. So 2. Give it. Where's 1? Great. There you go. Talk into the end.
Okay. Thank you. So I love that you said we're all in this together. But one thing I didn't see addressed today is about disabled people and how are they supposed to harden and clear their properties?
Two things. One, that's one of the whole points of when the gentleman asked about, is there going to be help? Yeah, people that need all of us to help. How do we all of us help? We have the government help. I mean, we all pay taxes, and then so there will be efforts to try to do that, but they won't be as comprehensive as they should be, and that's where neighbors need to identify those people. We need to try to get to resources those people, and I'm going to very quickly let Stephen just try to give us that answer, because you guys.
I would highly recommend you signing up for a newsletter. We'll send out when cycles are available for applications to come in, and those are the types of populations of people we're trying to help. I will also say work with your community. If you have a fire-wise community, you can lean on your neighbors to help out with that as well. So please reach out to us.
Great. Number 2, and where's number 3? Right behind you there, number 3. Thanks.
Several months ago, I had an inspection of my house from the Firewise team. Very useful. A recommendation: pull down a rotting wooden patio cover. Easy, we would think. My HOA CCRs say I can only replace with wood. How are you going to address HOAs that are 25 years in the past?
Great. There will be legislation about that. I think there have to be legislation about it. The issue has come up, all right? So thank you. And my staff is going to put that on our legislation list, right? Number 3, where's number 4 before number 3 starts? Who is number 4? Somebody has the memory that I have, right? Can't remember, right? Were you number 4? You can't remember? Or you're grabbing number 4? All right, go. Right here. This gentleman will take number 4 in the plaid shirt there. Go ahead, number 3.
Yeah, my name's Nick Brown, lifelong resident, 45 years in the county. I own property in Somas that backs up to South Mountain. And I have personally mowed my neighbors' properties, and that mowing has aided in 3 fires that we've been through. And so I have firsthand seen how well and effective that is. I would encourage the county and the state to have some type of active programs that would cut down on the fuel in the hills. I see this as a primary way to control these fires.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It made me appreciate, I don't know, the Ojai Fire Safe Council in terms of what they're doing with the goats and, that whole pattern. I mean, that is the area. So yes, the close to communities, we do have to definitely make significant efforts in terms of doing that.
Yeah,
Right?
the goats and herds are a great idea, but in addition to controlled burns, there could be machinery used. There are remote control machines that can climb hills and mow hills.
Great, good. I mean, we need it all, right? Number 4, and then right down here is number 5, right?
I got the impression, especially from the Palisades fire, that the fire department are working to evacuate people instead of actually getting in and trying to stop the fire, the spot fires. Wouldn't it be more efficient to have the police evacuate people and have the firemen actually do their job as firefighters?
Joe, do you want to try to answer that? I'm going to answer it after you try, but I want to give you the first shot.
I'll just say that when lives are threatened, the priority becomes lives, and the structures sometimes burn because of that. And both PD and fire work together with evacuation, so it's not just the fire department. PD is alongside with us, working on evacuations when we're doing that.
I'm going to answer this. I sat there in the Thomas fire for 4 hours on our street fighting those trying to keep those 4 houses because the embers kept coming and coming. You'd beat them down and you'd go to the next house and then you got 50-mile-an-hour winds coming. It wasn't long before that house was back on fire because you could never put it all the way out, at the height of this. Not one police car, not one fire truck, came down our street during that time. Because there are not enough police. There are not enough firefighters to go everywhere. So if I'm a firefighter, right, and I can evacuate these people, or I can go fight this fire, as Joe said, I'm going to evacuate these people. I'm going to get the people out first. We have to prioritize lives. And that's just, and somebody said this, and I didn't understand it until I went through it. But it's a firefight. And you talk about that in combat. It's literally like hand-to-hand combat. There is no game plan. I didn't sit there and say, well, scientifically, I'm going to do this and this. You're just running, make a decision, run, make another decision, run, make another decision. That's all you're doing in those situations. So that's why I'm a strong proponent of we have to have the neighborhood do more. If we had organized, prepared neighborhoods, and they talked about how they were going to, on our street, there were some people, older people, their cars were in their garage, and what happened to the power? Out. So their clicker didn't work. They didn't even know how to pull that thing down, right? But somebody in the neighborhood goes, hey, we have these 3 people on our street that are going to need help. So somebody's going to go do that. These people are going to catch the first spot fires that come into the neighborhood to make sure we get those out while everybody is moving. That's exactly, your question really stimulates what I think is the solution, right? Harden the homes, right? So you don't have as many problems, but then we've got to take care of each other. We take care of each other. We get all the people out. And so I've spent a lot of time recently studying Australia, because Australia has a different approach. And one of my bills is going to push for us to do a thorough examination of Australia. Australia has a leave early or stand and defend, right? But you don't get permission to stand and defend until you get yourself fully trained. You prove you're able-bodied, that you can handle it. You know when to leave and when, and be able to do it. And they count on that to work. Some version of that, I think, has got to be part of our problem, our solution, or we're going to have $12 billion claims before we even build a house. We'll just have another one of those, at some point in time. So really appreciate that question, and that's the hardest part to sort of encapsulate into a bill. All the things that have a community come together and take care of the community, whether it's taking care of the disabled person, getting out. But in America, we're very individualistic oriented, but we're also pretty darn generous when we finally decide to come together. And this is one of those times when we just have to recognize it's in all of our interest to be able to come together. You get the last question, ma'am.
Well, thank you. So I get the most time. No. First of all, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Matt, for holding this town hall. I think it started a conversation that has to lead to other conversations as we move forward through this. My name is Naz Medain. I am the former city council candidate for District 2, which is one of the most susceptible districts in Ventura City to wildfire. The hillside that abuts our community is where the wildfire for the Thomas Fire came through. The reason I mention that is because the top platform of my campaign was wildfire safety on our hillsides. The election was November 5th, and the mountain fire was November 6th. During my campaign, I was told over and over, this is not a winning issue. No one cares about wildfire. Again, election was the 5th, the fire was the 6th. So I wasn't meant to win. That's okay. The point is, I then took on starting the second Firewise community. We're doing that right now. We're in the throes of putting our group together with the help of Stephen and Natasha. So hopefully we'll have our community get together and harden our homes and do the education involved in what we need to do for our homes within our limits. My question to you is, what accountability do the owners of open space have to maintain brush, and namely the Ventura Land Trust, which you were instrumental in funding a $7 million grant for them, which was a huge boon to them. But is there any oversight on that $7 million that says they must use that for fire safety mitigation, especially along the wild-urban interface? Thank you.
No, there's no requirement written into a grant of $7 million for them to be able to purchase that land that they had to do some different fire protection than any other property owner. All property owners have certain requirements, and that's what this one had. That might actually be something, if there's this true cultural change, that might actually be something that gets associated with big tracts of open space or any places that have a wildfire urban interaction. That might be, but that was 3 years ago, I believe, that we were able to secure that money, and I'm proud of the fact that we're one of the few places that voted to save the property and then turned around and put our money where our mouth was and actually purchased the property and found, had a great organization of people to try to make that happen. So thanks. That was sort of an appropriate last question for us. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Thank you. And I fully recognize this could have been a 3-day summit, and we tried to squeeze as much as we could. The assembly member and I talked. We said, let's try to do as much as we can in 2 hours. And we really wanted to start that discussion. We wanted to put faces with names, so you know what resources are out there, who you should be contacting for what questions you have. You saw the assembly members' contact information, my contact information, all of them. Please, this is just the start of a discussion. Continue it, reach out, ask questions. We're here as a resource. We want to help. And as the last speaker said, this needs to be an absolute priority of everyone in the community. So something not mentioned real quick is there's things called community emergency response training, CERT training. It's something I highly recommend everyone do. My office is starting a news training next month. They're offered throughout the county, different areas, but this training teaches you how to be a leader in your community when the next disaster strikes. So I highly recommend reach out. I can give you more information, but in the Ojai Valley alone, there's 1,200 people who are certified. Ventura, there's several thousand certified as well. Please reach out and get involved with that too. With that, I'd like to hand it over to the assembly member for the final word.
Thanks a lot, Matt. How about one more thank you for Matt and the County of Ventura. So they've just been great partners. So my final comment is this, and that is, spent a lot of time trying to talk about we need to work together. And in our communities, when we all start to work together, we all know that means lots of different personalities are going to have to come together and try to make it work. There's nothing that as a county supervisor, I spent more time on and had less success on than trying to deal with neighbor to neighbor complaints about anything, right? And so my point is, if we can't, sort of agree on the barking dog, it's really going to be much, it's a challenge. But that's exactly what we have to overcome to really make this work. And so I'm just going to ask every one of us, try to be the leader in your neighborhood that is the oil that keeps the neighborhood working, the moving parts. You're going to have energetic people that want to do all kinds of stuff and drive people crazy, and you have other people that are going to be blocks in the road, and somebody's got to be the oil to try to pull that together. And so as you're personally frustrated, we all will be when we get involved with our neighbors, as you're personally frustrated, if you'll just try to, as much as possible, deal with it with real grace and think about the long run, what we're trying to accomplish. And that can go a long ways, and you can calm a lot of things down, and you can accomplish a lot. So good luck to each one of you in terms of trying to protect your family, trying to protect your home, and trying to protect your neighborhood. It's really been a pleasure to be here tonight, and this won't be the last time that we'll be talking to you about this. Thank you all very much.